digitalization in higher ed specifically. What is actually coming? What can be done? And we'll be led through this by Kristen Heiss, who's the CEO of OpenCampus, which does software to actually manage a lot of higher education processes. So, Kristen, please come out. Go get him.
So, hello, welcome to this enlightening session about higher ed technology and where we actually are. I'll give you a quick outline now about what OpenCampus is doing. We are mainly doing student information management for the German market. So like 500,000 students are using the systems of OpenCampus, and we are in close contacts with the universities who are actually using our systems. And so we have a deep look inside the problems and the issues and the actual implementation of technology at the university is facing. So as lots of the talks we've had so far are very visionary, and we have several things that we call a revolution, we'll now have a look at how the real situation is from the perspective of the universities. So what McKinsey actually ranked is how does education compare to other verticals in the industry, how much is being digitalized already there. And they found that in the verticals that they identified, education is ranked 14th place, which is, well, sort of okay, right? But it's not where it should be, because even other verticals that are less digitizable are further better than education. So we're actually missing the potential of how much we could do in using EdTech in education so far. We've built a lot of nice apps and student-teacher interaction parts, but the overall of the campus management, how much is IT-based and how much is still paper-based, that is actually currently a big issue. So to quickly outline where the problem sits, we'll have a graph here that actually illustrates what are the segments, the sectors that the universities are working in. So we have a lot of digitization already in the student success management and the e-learning, because it's pretty easy to scale, right? We can just open up an app, students can use it, but the problem is the integration. How does that embed with the rest of the infrastructure that we are using at the university? So the overall idea is to have all that actually managed with one central system, with one single point of contact for the teachers, for the administration, and for the students. So far we are failing, especially in these segments like governance, information security, and analytics is on the rise now, but the problem here as well is how do I analyze data that is distributed into 26 different applications at the campus? How do I get the data in one place? And now looking at the scoring that EdTechxAsia did for a couple of universities, we see that these segments, student success and e-learning, are actually, working quite fair, established digitalization present. We have a 5-point score here. The average is 3.7. Looking at the rest of the segments we are working with, research computing, risk management, information security, and the governance, that's one of the biggest problems that we see. We conducted a survey in Germany, and it turns out that more than 60% of the time that administrators use at the university is spent on paperwork. They could probably save that by digitalizing the stuff. And looking at the increase, how much more was digitalized during a year on that 5-point score, the average was 0.1 points. So there's probably no business, no vertical that's slower in digitalizing its processes than education. which we should definitely change, right? How come that this is going so slow? Well, one problem is it's not really easy to convert processes. It's too hard for teachers and administration to use the technology. We've seen that in the discussion about the MOOCs, right? We thought MOOCs are going to be the revolution for IT. Everybody will sit at home, get all the lectures just streamed, do the tests online, and doesn't have to appear at the university. It turned out MOOCs actually failed to be the revolution. Yeah? They are actually a mean for universities and institutions that can afford to invest into MOOCs, because it's pretty complicated to broadcast, to do really good MOOCs. So as a matter of fact, it's just a small segment of all institutions that are providing good MOOCs. It's not a general mean of how we can educate, of how institutions can use the tool. And also what we found out, that with the lack of the teacher, students don't really engage with the content. Starting courses on a MOOC basis ends usually with a drop rate during the course. They start off, sign up, and then very few continue until the end. And one of the reasons is that we obviously thought we could eradicate the teacher, but the teacher is the most important person still in the whole approach. We can use technology, but we can replace the teacher in the concept of teaching. Now, that is another challenge. How do we address that? How do we bring teachers, how do we convince them to use technology? Looking at the reports about how confident people feel and how institutions rate themselves in terms of how digitalized they are, we have a distribution here that 1/3 of the institutions and teachers think they're actually early adopters. So if there's a new technology, they're willing to adopt it, they can use it, they feel okay with it. Then almost 40% are mainstream users. They say, okay, if that is a common tool, if everybody's using it, we'll adapt to it, which is not really visionary, right? They'll use it once it became common, and still more than 30%, about 30%, are late adopters. So they are actually refusing to use technology. They consider it to be too complicated. And this is probably where we as technology developers, as providers, should come in and make sure that the access is easier. It needs to be simplified. Right now, for an institution or a teacher, in most of the cases, it's just too complex to use a technology. And we have an urge to do that because we are facing a more or less global problem with the increasing cost of education. Over the last 10 years, the cost for tuition and education almost doubled in the average. And we have the situation in the States that students really have problems paying back their loans. And looking at the number of students we will need to educate in the next 20 years, we will have more than double the people in higher ed that require educational services. So raising costs and more than double the number of students that we need to educate, we really need to make sure that we do it more efficiently. We can use digitalization to make it more efficient. And you probably know that the hype cycle that Gartner usually defines, there are a lot of opportunities that we see here. A few things that were already addressed a few times today, virtual reality and augmented reality, they are in fact something that can be a big lever, can raise efficiency. We did that in the medical education, actually. We are saving a lot on money for the corpse and also for tissue samples. That's a good example of how AI, VR, augmented reality can simplify education, make it more cost effective, as long as we integrate the teacher. That was a crucial aspect. If we just give students access to this information without the guidance of a teacher, we will fail. And this is something that lots of studies actually found out. The connection, the guidance of the student through a teacher, and the connection of the information learned with emotion, that is inevitable for the success of remembering the information and understanding the information. So the reason why we need the teacher, and that is nicely illustrated here, the teacher is guiding the student, and he needs to connect an emotion to the content learned. And we will never be able to replace that with technology, at least not in the next 10 to 20 years. So theoretically, AI might be at that position someday to replace a teacher. But for now, our mission should be to develop technology that can easily be used by a teacher in order to guide the students. Thank you.